Welcome to you lovely people. We've got some gaming news to talk about. Hope you can appreciate my bisexual lighting shirt. It's actually just an Astrobot shirt I got from GameStop. Very nice, but it just happens to have all the colors. Be sure to watch that video if you haven't, by the way. In regards to that, it's about a Mr. JT video, kind of a follow up on that. But we're going to talk about the news that we've got going on right now. Xbox is reportedly closing Ninja Theory, Double Fine, and Compulsion games. Studio leaders are trying to buy themselves back before being shut down for good. So, this is, of course, just like literally a week after they announced a new Hellblade game just titled Senua. That's kind of interesting. Very interesting timing. Uh, it makes you wonder if they really have any kind of plans over there, like if they have any kind of long-term plans, because there's also the whole rumor that Gears of the War E-Day was kind of like almost last minute switch to a Xbox console exclusive after previously being announced coming to PlayStation 5. So that's kind of wild. But anyways, let's go ahead and read a little bit of this. This is from Engadget. There's all kinds of other places talking about it as well. So you got Ninja Theory, of course. They make the Hellblade games. They made a couple of other games. There was this one live service shooter game, I forget what it's called, that didn't do very well, which big shock because live service games typically fail. Maybe companies are starting to realize that, of course. The first Hellblade game, which they independently put out, I think they did get some backing from PlayStation, but they independently published and developed that game. And that was actually pretty successful for an indie title. At that time, they were selling it for a $30 price point. Did pretty good. Obviously, Xbox later on bought the studio. And then they greenlit the sequel, Hellblade 2 Senua's Sacrifice or Senua's Saga. I forget what it's called, but I played both of them. I am absolutely a fan of those games. In particular, the first Hellblade game was probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite game from 2017. Which is kind of wild because that was the year we had, Breath of the Wild. But I digress. The second game, I was kind of hoping for more. It was still really good. And at that time, it was literally the best looking game I've ever seen on my screen at all. But I was kind of expecting a little bit more out of it. It did seem kind of like a retread of the first game. And they were charging an extra $20. So that was a little disappointing, but I played that one on Game Pass anyways. And then now they're making this new game, of course, and now they're being supposedly shut down, which that kind of sucks, of course. Then we've got Double Fine, good old Tim Schafer, legend in the industry, responsible for some of the most impressive point-and-click games of all time. Of course, once that was all done with the whole LucasArts, kind of killing all that stuff off. He started his own studio, which of course is Double Fine. They made all kinds of cool games, Psychonauts, Brutal Legend, several others. They apparently are trying to be in the same situation of trying to get their studio back rather than being closed, which of course was after they sold the studio to Microsoft. Obviously I'm sure they made a lot of money doing so, but they want to get the studio back, apparently. Now, Compulsion Games doesn't really have the history that either Ninja Theory or Double Fine does. So, the chances of them actually doing something like that where they can remain independent and kind of go their own way probably won't happen, most likely. That one probably will be shut down for sure, unfortunately. Kind of a weird situation, But you do have to consider Microsoft has had how many game studios? We need to look this up. Okay, well, let's just do a quick search here. Xbox Game Studios. Let's see if it has like an actual list of their subsidiaries and all that good stuff. And they've had like several studios that they've had and got rid of and stuff like that. So this is according to Wikipedia, of course. They have the Coalition, Compulsion Games, Double Fine, Halo Studios, which of course was previously 343, In Exile Entertainment, Mojang Studios, Or is it Mojang? I'm pretty sure it's Mojang though. Ninja Theory, Obsidian Entertainment, Playground Games, Rare, Turn 10 Studios, Undead Labs, World's Edge, and Xbox Game Studios Publishing. And this is not even counting subsidiaries that they own now but aren't considered part of the Xbox brand. Bethesda, Activision, all of the studios that fall under them, of course. You can see Microsoft has had quite a history in the past already of selling or spinning off various studios. Some big names, of course, among those like Ensemble Studios, Lionhead Studios, just to name a couple, that made all kinds of beloved games like the Fable series, Age of Empires, yada yada. So this is absolutely nothing new for Microsoft, and I'm frankly surprised it took this long. You know, Although it does seem like at the same time it's a little premature given how little time Asha Sharma has been behind the helm. I don't know. It's really weird, and especially the timing, like with in particular with Ninja Theory, with announcing a new game and then be like, yeah, about that, we're gonna shut that studio down. Like, what happens if they can't buy their independence and you do have to shut the studio down? What happens to that game? Because obviously, you'll either have to cancel the game, which that's kind of an embarrassment to make a big announcement for a game and then end up canceling it like the next month later, or you'll have to shift that over to another studio, one that hasn't been working on that game, which is going to inevitably cause issues with that. You're going to have to delay that game probably so they get caught up. You're probably going to have to hire people from the team that you just closed down in order to assist with development and get everything going, which is going to increase the cost of everything because you're paying for that other studio, plus you're rehiring new people, getting that done, doing everything that is involved with closing the studio and etc. All the legal stuff and all the logistics and everything like that. So it's really weird that they're doing that. But we of course did a video previously where I did talk about how Xbox is looking at possibly spinning off or being sold or whichever, which I did a video about that. It wasn't exclusively about that. Unfortunately, not anybody really watched it. The YouTube algorithm was not very kind. I guess the subscribers just didn't care to watch it. It is what it is. But, like, I'm just so disappointed at this whole industry. Microsoft is definitely one of the biggest culprits. They're definitely one of the most guilty parties. But at the same time, it's not just them. It is practically everybody. It literally is practically everybody that's guilty of this. It doesn't matter if it's Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, any of these third-party publishers like EA or Ubisoft, Square Enix. It doesn't matter who it is. They all really do not have their finger on the pulse. There's a lot of things that these companies could do in order to make more revenue, cut costs, etc., and do so in kind of an ethical way, a way that gamers would actually be cool with. And you always see in comments all the time, people be like, "Hey, do a re-release of this, I'll buy it." And it'd be like some 20-year-old game that they could literally probably have a couple of coders write up an emulation thing. And they don't even have to use like program their own thing. They could probably just use something that has like a GPL license or whatever, something like that, and they can make a bunch of money, just for like a bare minimum effort. They could, work with indie companies that have very shoestring budgets to put out cool games, like cool games using their IP at a fraction of the cost that people would buy up. It may not be like super like, oh, we didn't make like $500 million in revenue in the first quarter off this one game, so it's a total failure. Like, maybe if you don't spend $500 million making games in the first place, you wouldn't have to make that much off of one title. But I digress. I digress. Hopefully, hopefully this doesn't happen. Hopefully this is just some silly rumor, maybe just some heated chatter from some Microsoft executive. But I don't know. I don't know at the same time because, obviously they're going to have to make some big changes. And, I mean, to be honest, out of the studios listed here, they are the ones that technically make the most sense. As sad as it is to say, because they put out games that don't sell, and it sucks because like they're pretty good games, generally speaking. But at the same time, that it's a company, they have to do things that's profitable. They're trying to go for mass market appeal and all this good stuff. And, the output is just not making the sales figures. Probably at least not for the budget behind these games, I would think. And, and like in the case of Double Fine, they don't really use their IP all that much. They have a wealth of different intellectual property that they've built up over like 20 years. And only like one of those games has a sequel of any kind. And that's Psychonauts. It had a couple of sequels. It had Psychonauts 2, of course, and then they had the VR Psychonauts game. Everything else that they've done is all like one and done. Like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was like a Costume Quest and Costume Quest 2. If I remember right, I don't know. But those are like really low budget, like indie games. Like there was a few people that worked on those. So a different story entirely. But yeah, at least I think there was a Costume Quest 2. I don't remember. But and then Compulsion Games, obviously they don't have a huge catalog of games. I remember We Happy Few was kind of popular for a while. And then, of course, South of Midnight got a lot of awards. But it was like one of those games that probably didn't sell. It was probably like mainly Game Pass bait. So, like maybe it got pretty good engagement on Game Pass. It probably didn't get great sales. Because I don't know a lot of people that actually have played the game. So that it kind of sucks though, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, but at the same time, a lot of talented, hardworking people that are going to be out of a job, and that's going to be less games for you and me. So hopefully the rest of the studios, are spared this fate. In the case of Double Fine and Ninja Theory, hopefully they can figure it out to remain operational without being under Microsoft's umbrella, which would probably be for the best. I mean, Ninja Theory probably was its most successful when they went off and did their own thing. And they did, the first Hellblade, which was actually a successful game for them. And then, obviously getting under that corporate muckery, it kind of got screwed up. Double Fine, same thing. Kind of insane that they decided to get bought by Microsoft because it seemed like they were doing okay before then. They've had a string of very good quality games. One of the most successful Kickstarter campaigns of all time. Like, I think Double Fine Adventure was like literally the first Kickstarter game that raised at least $1 million off of a Kickstarter campaign. I think it was the very first one, if I remember right. Or at least one of the first for sure. It was like long time ago. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. And thank you very much for watching. If you happen to enjoy this video, be sure to check out the video that's right above my head. I think you're going to dig it. That's the most recent one, or maybe it's the algorithm one. I don't know. YouTube gets it all screwed up. The other one's going to be the algorithm one or the most recent one. Maybe you can figure out which is which. And don't forget to subscribe over there. But that's going to be the last line.